Welcome to the deep dive. We're digging into this really interesting stack of sources you sent over, all about how Hollywood just completely transformed itself.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We're not talking small adjustments here. This was a fundamental shift,
Hmm.
going from that old studio system, the sort of film factory idea,
Right.
to the massive global entertainment businesses we see today.
Exactly. So our mission really is to unpack the key ideas. What was the underlying logic? The economic forces, social shifts, maybe even political pressures that totally reshaped Tinseltown.
It's interesting because on the surface, some things look the same, but the actual engine driving it all, completely different now.
Okay, so let's get into it. The sources, they paint this picture of old Hollywood, right? Dominated by just a few huge studios. We're
Yeah.
talking vertical integration. So companies like, say, MGM owned everything,
Mhm.
making the movies, distributing them, even the cinemas you watch them in.
Yeah, they control the whole chain. And the talent, too, through those really long-term contracts. Marketing wasn't a huge expense because, well, they owned the theaters.
Right.
And the money came almost entirely from ticket sales, sometimes forced on theaters with block booking. They had to buy a whole slate of films, good and bad.
But that whole system started to crumble. First, there was the big antitrust case, U.S. versus Paramount,
Yeah.
that forced the studios to sell off their cinemas.
A huge blow.
Yeah. And then, boom, television arrives. Suddenly, people have entertainment right in their living rooms.
And the sources also bring up HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee. That
Yeah.
had a massive impact, particularly on the creative side with the blacklisting, a real chilling effect.
So all these pressures kind of cracked the system open. Power began to shift a little bit towards independent producers, but really significantly towards the stars and their agents.
That's a key point. The sources mention James Stewart's deal for Winchester 73 back in 1950. Instead of just a salary, he negotiated for a percentage of the film's profits.
Which was revolutionary at the
Well,
time.
Absolutely, a total game changer for talent leverage.
Okay, so here's where, according to the material, the real transformation, the core of the new Hollywood logic kicks in.
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily like better movies driving it. It was the explosion of ways people could watch films outside the cinema, at home.
Oh, completely. VHS tape started it, then cable TV, pay-per-view, but the DVD, that just blew the doors off the old revenue model.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. The sources point out that by the early 2000s, studios were making something like 5 times more money from home entertainment DVDs rental sales than from actual movie tickets.
And that is the central economic logic of the new Hollywood right there.
Mm-hmm.
The profit center literally moved off the big screen. It became all about licensing that content, selling it for home viewing, and importantly, merchandise.
Like Disney was doing way back. Right. Making serious money from licensing characters, even before the films themselves were massive blockbusters.
Exactly. Disney was kind of a pioneer there. And it leads straight into what the sources call the Midas formula.
Okay, what's that?
It's about creating valuable intellectual property IP, characters, stories, worlds, things you can spin off into toys, video games, theme park rides, endless sequels and prequels.
Ah, like Star Wars.
Right.
Or Pixar films.
Precisely. These big IP-driven projects, yeah, they're expensive to make up front, but the sources argue they became the engine because the real payoff wasn't the box office. It was all that other stuff, the non-theatrical revenue.
Which also helps explain, why maybe certain types of films like complex adult dramas or maybe R-rated movies often struggle to get studio backing, even if critics love them.
Right. If it doesn't easily translate into a toy line or a massive DVD seller, the financial logic just isn't as compelling for the big studios anymore.
And managing all this money coming from everywhere, tickets, DVDs, streaming rights, toys allowed, it involves these complex financial setups the sources talk about, particularly this thing called the clearinghouse.
Yeah, the clearinghouse accounting, it's
Right.
imagine a giant pot. All the money a film earns from every single source gets dumped into this pot.
Okay.
But before anyone who's owed a percentage of the net profit sees anything.
Let me guess. The studio takes its cut.
Oh, yeah. Massive cuts.
Hmm.
Huge fees for distribution, marketing overhead, interest. Sometimes these fees add up to more than the movie even cost to make in the first place.
Wow. So people expecting a share of the net profits often end up with nothing.
Very often. Because the clearinghouse is structured so the studio recoups its costs and its fees first, especially locking down that lucrative home video money. It
Yeah.
really controls the flow.
So that shifted power again, didn't it? Making A-list stars and powerful agents even more crucial because they can demand huge upfront salaries, bypassing the whole net profit mess.
Exactly. Or they set up their own production companies, sort of like mini studios, leveraging their star power to get better deals.
It's not just economics, though. The sources also touch on social factors, political forces. Decisions aren't always just about the bottom line.
True. Prestige still matters. Winning awards, having relationships with the big stars and agents, and, let's be honest, things like who you know, personal loyalty, even nepotism, they still play a part.
And politically, studios lean heavily on government, don't they? For things like copyright protection, ensuring they can sell films globally, even tech mandates like DVD encryption.
Absolutely. They lobby hard. And historically, they've always had to navigate political pressures from the old Hays Code censorship days right up to, as you mentioned, HUAC.
And this whole landscape, the economics, the politics, it can actually shape the kinds of stories that get told, right?
The sources suggest so. Maybe a move away from, say, tricky legal dramas or politically charged stories.
Towards.
Towards stuff that travels well globally. Big action heroes, maybe simpler conflicts, using villains that aren't too controversial.
Yes.
Aliens, generic corporations, that sort of thing.
And technology's role in all this, especially digital tech, CGI.
Fundamentally changed production, obviously. Allowed for creating anything visually, digital manipulation. But it also maybe shifted creative control sometimes, putting more layers between the director and the final image.
And it enabled new marketing tricks, too. The sources talk about pseudo-regalism or pseudo-news.
Yeah, essentially using marketing materials that are designed to look like real news reports or candid moments to build buzz and manage a star's image.
Creating narratives not just on screen, but off screen as well. It's all part of the package.
Exactly.
So let's try and wrap this up. What does all this really mean? We've seen Hollywood wasn't just, updated. It feels like it was fundamentally replaced, rewired.
Yeah, the core logic driving it shifted dramatically. From relying on people buying tickets at the cinema to making the real money off screen, home entertainment, licensing that IP.
And the power dynamics changed, too. Studios lost that total vertical control, talent and agents gained enormous leverage. But it all operates within these complex financial systems, like that clearinghouse, which often seem designed to benefit the studio first.
Right. And technology political needs.
Yeah.
They didn't just change how films were made or sold.
They even influenced the types of stories deemed worthwhile to tell. So here's maybe something to think about. If the real power, the real profit, is increasingly found after a film's theatrical run in boardrooms and licensing deals, toys, streaming rights across the globe, how does that hidden off-screen economy ultimately shape what we actually end up seeing on the screen? It must change the very nature of the films themselves.
A really crucial question. Definitely something to mull over.